Let me begin with a question. Who is responsible for the faith formation of a child? The home or the church? Maybe you think it's the home that has the primary responsibility for faith formation. Or maybe you think that it's the church that has that responsibility. I wonder if you think it's unhelpful for it to be an either or, and instead we need both the home and the church woven together to spiritually care for our children. In this session, we look at 6 models of ministry with families. These models of family ministry emphasise differing degrees of responsibility for home or church. As you listen to them, I wonder which one fits your context best. Which one lines up with the values and resources of your community? I wonder if there's a combination of models that might work best for you and the families you minister with. So let's examine these 6 models of family ministry and look at their advantages and disadvantages. The first is the educational model. As it sounds, this model looks to educational programs to strengthen families. Programs in the educational model are guardrails to keep families from falling off the cliff into emotional and relationship crises. These educational programs often address certain stages of a family's life. They may be pre-marriage programs or parenting education, or they might be a program specifically for parents of teenagers, for example. And they might look like webinars, workshops, or small group studies, focusing on the passing of information and inspiration to those who attend. I wonder what might be the advantages or disadvantages of an educational model of family ministry. Well, here are some suggested advantages. Well, they appeal to cognitive, high-achieving people, those who like school and education. This model appeals by providing answers for an expert culture. Everyone wants facts and truths. They provide an easy entry level to ministry. Attending a class is non-threatening. And people can often find support and friendship with others in the same life stage. This model can be an outreach to the community, for example, parenting classes. The disadvantages of this model, well, one of the main disadvantages is that they can have too much information and not transformation. This programs can minister to the head and not the heart. They tend to connect with the same keen and interested parents and families. The same people always come, but they aren't the ones who may really need the information. And it can be time-consuming for busy families. So that's number 1, the educational model, which you may have seen in your church. Model number 2 is the caring ministries model. So the caring ministries model focuses on providing church resources for people in crisis. So church is a healing, care-giving ministry. This model is like a crisis medical centre to help families who have crashed through the guardrails, the educational model, and need crisis intervention at the bottom of the cliff. The focus of this model of ministry is to bring healing and restoration, not simply to prevent a crisis from happening. So this might include counselling, support groups, or prayer ministry. Some of the advantages of this model are that we know there are many hurting families in our culture and society, and many of them turn to the church for help in a crisis. Church is the one lifelong service provider. Churches walk with families through life's significant experiences from birth to death. And they can also be an outreach to the community. Some of the disadvantages with this model is that there can be an overemphasis on the presenting issues rather than holistic solutions for that whole family. They can be focused on fixing what might have been prevented with education. There can be an emphasis on failure, which may shame people from coming. And a big disadvantage is they may result in volunteer and staff burnout from addressing all these needs. So, model 1 is the educational model. Model 2 is the caring ministry model. Model 3 is the parent equipping model. So this model is based on the philosophy that parents are the main primary faith nurturers of their children, and the church can support them in their calling. We can look to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9 as an example of faith within the family. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. The parent equipping model focuses on equipping and strengthening parents as primary faith nurturers, and the church resources the family to nurture faith at home. So some examples of this might be parenting courses, programs for the whole family to be involved in, or resources for faith at home. Well, one of the obvious advantages of this model is that it follows the Old Testament mandate of Deuteronomy 4. Churches equip parents and families to nurture faith in their children rather than simply offering programs to children. This model builds family life rather than asking families to build church programs. We know that families spend most of their time beyond the four walls of the church building and more of their time at home. So this model is strategic. The disadvantages of this model is that parents don't want to, or for some reason can't take responsibility for faith formation in the home. Families may be too busy and prefer to outsource faith formation to the church. Parents who don't have faith themselves cannot or may struggle to pass on their faith to their children. It's difficult to minister with non-Christian or non-church attending parents and families in this model. And this model can overemphasize traditionally structured two-parent families in the church, particularly in the West. So model number 3 is the parent equipping model. Model number 4. Model number 4 is the family of families model. The church is the family of God. Therefore, it must function as an intergenerational family, the generations together, an intergenerational family of families, and be the family to one another in today's broken world. We see glimpses of this in the way that Jesus' own family operated. For example, when Jesus was lost on his way home from the temple, there didn't need to be panic. As the child was the responsibility of the whole community, they knew that Jesus was safe. Then in Matthew chapter 12, Jesus says these astonishing words, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers? Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." The focus of this model is on the generations together, passing on faith from one generation to the next. It follows the New Testament mandate for all believers, regardless of age, to be fully fledged members of the family of God. It follows the Old Testament way of understanding the community of faith. Values of the community are experienced together in order to sustain and pass on faith to the next generation. This might look like community celebrations or intergenerational worship services, mentoring between generations, or a family or an intergenerational camp. Well, the advantages of this model are that it meets the needs of all people in the congregation. It's inclusive and promotes a sense of belonging, not just for children and young people, but for all. Research, such as 40 assets, points to the need for at least 3 non-parental adults in the life of a child. It's a very relational model, and it honours the we over the me. And it offers support networks in highly mobile societies where families may be separated by geography and not live near their extended family. Some of the disadvantages of this model is that taken to the extreme, it could be that there are no age-appropriate learning focused at the developmental needs for each age and stage of life. It may create a challenge for families of adolescents who seek to establish independence from their family of origin. And in many countries, there is an age-graded culture. So this idea could be highly countercultural and may face resistance. The family of families model. So we're up to number 5. Number 5 is family in service model. So in this model, the family is the launchpad for service and ministry in the community. The church equips, provides and supports service opportunities, creates connections with other families, and helps debrief the service experiences. Well, one of the advantages of this model is that families serving together bring the cohesion of the family unit. Some studies report that young adults say that families serving together during their childhood and adolescence was one of the top 5 factors that encouraged them to sustain faith on their own when they left home. Acts of service and compassion often form a bridge across which the good news of Jesus can travel. Those are some great advantages. The disadvantages of this model can be that without appropriate debriefing, acts of service can become simply humanitarian acts of charity, rather than a spiritual experience for the participants. Without relationship building, it can be a flyby service. Come in, do the service, and then go, which is counterproductive. And for busy families, service can degenerate into just one more thing to do. Our 6th and final model is called the milestone model. The church partners with families in intentional ways during natural family life transitions or marker events in a family's life. A model that recognises the milestones in a family's life encourages parents to be actively involved in their child's faith journey as the church provides instruction and support. This model honours a child's holistic development and the development of all ages and stages. So some examples of milestones might be child dedication or infant baptism, might be the giving or receiving of a first Bible, confirmation or believer's baptism, or high school graduation. I wonder what milestones there are in your culture and context that are celebrated and honoured. Some of the advantages of this model are that it capitalises on natural life stages and times of greatest receptivity for families, parents and children. It builds connections between families going through similar life stages. And those who have participated in past milestone events are reminded of their own faith journey when others celebrate these milestones, and they can support those currently experiencing them. Some of the disadvantages can be that they are viewed as just one more event to attend. It may be intimidating for some parents or exclusive for those who participate. And for some families, children may not follow the developmental stages as outlined in a milestone schedule, and there can be concern or shame for some families if they miss a milestone. These are 6 models of family ministry, and some of the advantages and disadvantages of each. As we looked at each one, we can be reminded that no single model of family ministry is the perfect model. Each ministry must discern for itself what model or combination of models suits their context and community. Consider for a moment what family ministry could look like in your church, family, and community. Take a moment to dream of what would be best for your context, given all that you've learned about these 6 models. And what are your next steps? And who can you invite to join you in seeing your dreams take shape?